We have three speakers today that will be joining us. Kristen Stephenson, the Senior Vice President of Research and Analytics at GPEC, Drew Callow, the Business Database Consultant for State of Black Arizona, and Maria Lochner, the Deputy Director of Economic Development for the City of Tempe. But first, Chris Camacho, the President and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Economic Council, and Teniqua Broughton, the Executive Director of State of Black Arizona, will both share some welcome remarks and an overview of what to expect during this discussion. Let's start with Chris. Chris?
All right. Well, thank you, Robin. Thanks for everyone joining us today for this extremely important regional report where we'll discuss the State of Black Arizona, the partnership with GPEC, and really unveiling this the second edition of the business report. It seems like yesterday we were discussing the first report. So much has happened over the last year. And I think as we reflect on what we've learned and the takeaways from the first installment was we need to induce more Black ownership, more Black-owned businesses, at the same time inspiring the next generation of entrepreneurs, but also discussing the access points in terms of access to capital that would enable these companies to get to scale, to meet the community needs or the product needs, the consumer needs, and really become a strengthened part of our diversified economy. This report builds on some of the previous work that examines Black entrepreneurship and that access to capital I just mentioned. And we learned a lot through the process of the pandemic over the last 2 years, as we drew down information from the Paycheck Protection Program, a lot of the CDFI infrastructure to help small minority-owned businesses access capital. My takeaway was there's still a tremendous amount of work for us to do, but we must do it together. And if we want to build an economy that is truly reflective of our community and truly reflective of an ambitious regional strengthened economy around entrepreneurship and certainly around the individuals in our neighborhoods, our families, that further is a personification of the community we want to build, we must support all types of entrepreneurs in our community. So I'm just wholeheartedly excited to and delighted to recognize the support and partnership with Teniqua's team, with Robin, whom spent a lot of time with over the years, CFA, the Center for Economic Progress, and the GPEC team, Kristen and many others, as well as Drew and Maria, who are with us here today. This is truly a team effort. And I hope that, as we move forward through this process, as we work with our banks and CDFIs and other lending institutions, as well as what Drew will talk about here momentarily is the building of a business directory that will help all of our Black-owned businesses gain more notoriety. Certainly, as you'll see in the report, which is an incredible document, we have some of the most unique and interesting and eclectic Black-owned enterprises here in our market that I hope you all patronize. And so with that, again, it's an honor and pleasure of working with Teniqua and the team, and I'd love to have her say a few remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, for your remarks. And also thank you, Robin, for the introduction and the support. I'm so excited about today. So on behalf of the State of Black Arizona's board chair, Will James, members of the board and the staff, we're just pleased to continue our partnership with the Greater Phoenix Economic Council in providing you our second State of Black Business report. We are also grateful for our supportive collaborators, the Arizona Center for Economic Progress, the Black Chamber of Arizona, Arizona Community Foundation's Black Philanthropy Initiative, and the Center for the Future of Arizona. Thank you all. And today also Drew and Maria for your work and being able to take action around our last report. A lot of this has already been shared through what Chris talked about, but I wanted to just remind everybody that first partnership when we started was really about beginning to fill the knowledge gap around Arizona's diverse economy. It's about being able to show and understand who is most under-resourced. In tandem, that first analysis of those data points last year brought to light the challenges to overcome some opportunities to expand the presence of Black businesses within our state. And remember, it's important that economic benefits to the overall economy work when we all succeed. Today's report covers a number of key points around Black entrepreneurship rates, access to capital, and undercapitalization that have been put and assembled in a concise snapshot of Arizona's Black population's contributions to the local economy. I want to remind you just of a few figures and facts that we can reflect on. We shared some of this before, and you've probably heard me talk about this a number of times through a number of different events. But COVID-19 national figures had displayed that over 41% of African-American businesses were lost in the first 30 days of the pandemic in 2020. We also know that Black-owned businesses need more support for access to capital, network, and other mechanisms for growth. But what's most important is that African-American business owners have started their business mostly out of necessity rather than opportunity. And many of them have needed more access to capital to just maintain the stability of the operations of their business. Black African-American in Arizona are the fastest growing demographics in our state and are key to the success of its economy. We believe everybody wins when we invest in our Black businesses and our neighbors. For Arizona to thrive, attract industries, and to be a place where people want to live, work, and raise their families, we just cannot afford financially or morally to leave anyone out. This is not about helping one group at the expense of others, but we must continue our fight to make intentional, target investments of political, social, and business capital to aid in our priorities of building a better ecosystem for Black-owned businesses and entrepreneurs. It is a matter of good business, which creates a greater opportunity for all Arizonans. In celebration of Black Business Month, we just want to acknowledge and uplift the products, services, and skills of all the Black-owned businesses and entrepreneurs across the state. Your self-determination, Black pride, and resilience have been a key factor in making this work so much more necessary and worthwhile. Please enjoy our latest report and the action steps taken by our community and local government. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you, Teniqua, for kicking off this important discussion. The first panelist we'll be hearing from is Kristen Stephenson, Senior Vice President of Research and Analytics at GPEC. Kristen will be giving us an update on the data that was released last year with a deep dive into access to capital and entrepreneurship. Please welcome Kristen.
Thanks, Robin. Very excited here to talk to you all today about the second edition of the State of Black Business Report. Before we get started, though, I want to give a special thanks, obviously to Teniqua and her work driving this forward, but I also want to give a special thanks to Fiona Onyango on our research team. She put in tremendous effort in a lot of this research and analytics and helping me co-author this report with Teniqua. So I just wanted to give her special thanks before we get started. So if we can go to the next slide, due to the pandemic, some of the data that we had shared in the original report, as we were going to update the second edition, we found incomplete or unavailable due to issues with the pandemic and data collection and things like that. But what we noticed when we were looking through this information was that additional data points had been brought to light around the issues around access to capital and entrepreneurship. So we took a deep dive into that with this report. Teniqua in her opening remarks kind of hit on that a little bit of what happened with the pandemic. So as we dive into this report more, you'll see exactly how that panned out. Next slide. So starting off by talking about entrepreneurship, according to the Kauffman Foundation, nationwide, Black Americans have the lowest rate of entrepreneurship, averaging just 0.03% since 1996. This is compared to 0.41% for Hispanics and 0.3% for white Americans and Asian Americans. However, we have seen a little bit of positivity here with some uptick in the last couple of years. In 2020, entrepreneurship rates were 0.38, and in 2021, 0.28. It will be interesting to see the long-term trends to see if this was as a result of the pandemic or if this is a long-term trend where we'll start to see closer to parity. But the one thing that we do want to also call out here is that Black entrepreneurs have the lowest opportunity share. So what this means is that they are more likely to start a business out of necessity rather than opportunity. Next slide. So the Brookings Institution has they've done some interesting analysis here, which kind of goes into what we were talking about on the previous slide, where right now, by their estimates, we have just over 1,000 Black-owned firms in Greater Phoenix area, which accounts for 1% of the firms in our region. If you were to look at parity, so what we mean by parity here is if the percentage of Black-owned businesses reach the same percentage of the Black and African American population in Greater Phoenix, we would have an additional almost 5,000 new businesses. And then along with that, we've seen fewer jobs per firm. So Black-owned businesses are more likely to be non-employer firms, meaning that they are sole proprietorships, they do not have any employees. And so you can see on average, the number of jobs per firm is actually lower. If they were to reach parity with what the average firm is in Greater Phoenix, the average firm in Greater Phoenix amongst all businesses is 24. So this would allow us, if they were to reach that parity, to create an additional 15,000 jobs in our region. So it's not even just focusing on how many businesses there are, but also the size of the business and how we can help those businesses that are existing continue to grow. Next slide. The other thing that we really want to focus on too is access to capital. So studies have shown that there's less access to capital than other small businesses. You can see on the percentages here that was indicated as a bigger challenge for Black entrepreneurs than than looking at the entire sample. Over 50% have identified that as an issue. And as we were analyzing some data from Crunchbase, they have done an analysis of Black-led, Black-founded businesses and their access to startup capital, so venture funding, seed funding, and things of that nature. They have tracked about 1,500 businesses and found that the median startup, and this is nationwide, the median startup funding is just $2.2 million for a round of funding. The data is actually very sparse for Arizona. They've actually only identified 7 companies in Arizona that are Black founded or Black led that have received startup funding in the last couple decades, and that funding wasn't even reported. So we can see that there's a real issue here with access to capital, with access to the startup and venture funding. And if we go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit more about that as well. What this also, it's not even just the access to capital, it's the undercapitalization for the amounts that they get to. So as I mentioned, the median being just $2.2 million. When you're talking venture funding, obviously there's a lot more opportunity there. So Blacks and Hispanics as well are about twice as likely to start their business with less than $10,000 in capital. Numerous studies have been done that show the access and level of capital that you have is a strong predictor of how a business will be successful going forward. So hitting this issue from the very starting end, what we need to do to get businesses to have this access to capital and the amount of capital they need is going to determine the long-term trajectory of how businesses succeed, showing that it's very important to hit this issue from the front end, in addition to all the other support that's needed along the way. The Congressional Black Caucus Foundation found that Black Americans are more likely to rely on personal savings to fund their entrepreneurship endeavors versus other forms of capital. And then if we can go to the next slide. So we don't want to just talk about the information of, okay, here's where the issues are, here's what the data says. We do also want to talk about how we can present solutions to this. So we were looking at a few best practices models for programs in Arizona, and then we've also looked at some program models nationwide of things that could be implemented here in Arizona, successful projects that have been done elsewhere. So starting with the Arizona programs, you can find more detail about each of these programs in the report, which has been shared in the chat. So please definitely download that after the webinar. But I do want to kind of go over the high level of what each of those say. So they, the first one I want to talk about is the CME project. So this was launched by ARG Cultivators as part of the social justice project established by the Black Philanthropy Initiative. So this is an 18-month program that supports, tracks, and elevates a small cohort of companies. The companies receive an investment in their business plan, about $16,500. They go to a business accelerator for the first couple months, have the ability to learn how to write out a business plan for the next couple of years. And then the program follows them for the next 18 months to provide that support, monthly engagement, just general support that they need to help them overcome that initial startup phase and working with the company. So they have a small cohort that they've put into place to follow for the next 18 months. The next program that I want to discuss is the UPI Loan Fund. This is the first African-American established and led community development financial institution in Arizona. So CDFIs provide a lot of opportunity for small and micro loans. So this CDFI provides top quality loan options at affordable interest rates. The next one is the Foresight Foundation for Economic Equity. This is a Black-led organization that's seeking to serve minority business enterprises by leveraging federal funds to invest in businesses and organizations that are in underserved communities. And then the last resource that we want to highlight in Arizona is the Small Business Administration. This is obviously a federal program, but they do have offices in every state, including ours, and they do have specific programs tailored to underserved communities. So this is where we have the opportunity to leverage some federal funding for state programs here to support our underserved businesses. Then if we go to the next slide, talking a little bit about the national programs, what we were looking at was some of these strong national models of consideration, programs that have been successful elsewhere that we see an opportunity to bring those into Greater Phoenix or something similar to that in Greater Phoenix. The first one is One Transaction. This is a result of a bank called One United Bank, which is the largest Black-owned bank in the US, and they've partnered with an organization called Lendistry. They specifically offer loans to Black entrepreneurs. The next one, the Chicago and Detroit Entrepreneurs of Color Fund. This has multiple organizations pairing together for this funding. So Fifth Third Bank, JP Morgan Chase, groups like the Kellogg Foundation and others have partnered with organizations like LISC and ASEAN Chicago to provide funds for Black entrepreneurs. They've specifically targeted geographies in Chicago that are a little bit underserved, the Chicago South and West Side neighborhoods. This program provides not only access to working capital, but training and technical services as well. So kind of that all-around support, not just funding, but the tools and resources that are needed to go along with the funding. The Path to 1555 initiative, which is an initiative designed to grow the percentage of Black-owned employer firms, addressing that gap in the non-employer businesses versus employer businesses. What I was talking about before, where they have the gap of companies being just a sole proprietorship and getting them to a company that employs people. And the last one I want to hit on is the fintech companies. So what we have seen is fintech is a real opportunity for Arizona here. We have a very strong infrastructure in place to support fintech companies. We've had a long history of a strong industry of finance and insurance. We've put regulations in place to support fintech, such as our fintech sandbox. So we have the opportunity to attract more fintech companies here. Where this is especially useful for Black-owned businesses is fintech companies have the opportunity to mitigate some of those gaps in financial equity. Brookings Institute has done a lot of research on this. They've shown that because fintech companies use more technology, they're able to address some of the issues around increased access and also reduce some of the costs for serving underserved populations. So there are groups that are tracking the fintech companies out there. And then we also do have other, this is just obviously the tip of the iceberg of the programs out there, but we wanted to share these as examples. There's more, the Rise Up program from Local First, which takes cohorts and provides mentoring and networking opportunities to develop and scale Black enterprises. There's multiple programs throughout the United States that can be put into place here, as well as programs here in Arizona that we should build up and provide, the ability to engage larger cohorts than, 15 or 30 people at a time. So with that, let's go to the recommendations. So some of the recommendations from our last report are already being implemented, which you'll get to hear about in the next few minutes from our next speakers, which I have to say, as a person who writes reports and does the research, I'm very excited about. You never want to see a report sit on the shelf. So I'm very excited that some of these recommendations that we have recommended in the first report being put into place. The great thing about that, we have the opportunity to continue to build on these recommendations, on the resources that have already started to be built. And here's what we're recommending for this next report. So what we want to recommend is an increased access to startup capital. The higher the startup capital, as I've mentioned before, the higher likelihood of better outcomes. So implementing some of these programs that we shared for the regional level on a bigger scale, or bringing some of these national programs here, provide us some additional opportunity to increase that access to startup capital. And then also generating new venture funding opportunities here. We're very fortunate in Greater Phoenix that we have a highly connected business community and a culture of inclusion. So as we work to bring additional venture funding opportunities here to the market, this will be more accessible to Black entrepreneurs and provide them that additional startup capital from the venture side that they would need. We also want to look at terms of credit for Black business owners and what we can do to address that. Many studies have shown that there are racial differences in perceived credit risk. So issues such as we need to increase financial literacy training, wealth capital, and better access to affordable credit options. That will close the gap in credit risk, which will help in turn get the startup capital, so you can kind of see how this is cascading down. And then finally, we want to close the financial institution gap. CDFIs, like the one I mentioned before, provide a needed source of funding for small and micro businesses. So increasing the support of CDFIs in the community will begin to close that gap. And with that, I will turn it back to Robin.
Thank you, Kristen. That was actually the research you guys have put together is so much more comprehensive than even the first report, which I didn't think would be possible, but you guys have really knocked it out of the park here. Really appreciate you sharing those insights, and we've actually developed quite a few questions from your segment that we will be sharing later. I'd like to now welcome Drew Callow, the business database consultant for State of Black Arizona. Drew will be speaking on the initiative to develop a database of Black-owned businesses in the community in partnership with the Black Philanthropy Initiative. Welcome, Drew.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you to everybody here today, everybody on the panel. I'm very happy to be a part of the important and interesting work being done by everybody here today. The Black Business Dashboard Development Team owes a debt of gratitude to the Black Philanthropy Initiative Social Justice Project. If you can go to the next slide. And BPI co-chairs Carl Gentles and Angela Allen, thank you especially for your leadership here. BPI established the Social Justice Project with the purpose of working to improve economic equity in Arizona's African-American communities statewide. The project's focus has been on helping to close the wealth gap through supporting, tracking, evaluating Black-owned businesses, and partnering with nonprofits such as ARG Cultivators Community and their CME program and the State of Black Arizona. And I have to say the work that has come out of those partnerships has been really, really impressive. The concept of this dashboard has been a work in progress for the last year or so. We're still early in the process, as you'll see shortly, we still have a lot of work ahead of us. But our team has really enjoyed this project, and we look forward to continuing our work here, growing our data resources, our partnerships, and creating a valuable tool for the state of Arizona and Greater Phoenix. So as you can see, our business dashboard goals really are to design a research tool that examines the geographic dispersion and distribution and various other characteristics of Black-owned businesses in Arizona. And I emphasize a research tool because what we're building is a database and a data dashboard. It's not so much a consumer-oriented directory for consumers looking to patron these businesses, as we are partnering with a lot of entities that are already doing this type of work. And rather than reinventing the wheel, we want to kind of be the other side of the coin and support their work while, creating something that's mutually beneficial. And so we found through our work in the initial version of the State of Black Business Report that available data on Black-owned businesses was severely lacking, especially at the local level. Existing national data is highly suppressed. Not many organizations and markets have this type of localized initiative yet, although awareness of the importance of this data has grown in recent years with the onset of the pandemic and other social and cultural moments. But the progress has been slow. Increased efforts to capture this information have also been hindered by the effects of the pandemic, constraining resources, et cetera. So overall, we're striving to make this dashboard a useful research tool that is valuable to businesses, investors, community organizations, CDFIs, CDCs, government, and academia. And we also want to create something that can be replicated at the local level or the state level in other markets across the US. If you go to the next slide, please. And so here are just a few of the key questions to give you a sense of what we're trying to accomplish here. And this is not a comprehensive list of the questions we're trying to answer. We just keep coming up with more questions as we move forward. Naturally, such is the way of science. And we really wanted to know, where are businesses thriving? How do businesses and the success and longevity of businesses compare across industries? What role do infrastructure and public policy play in the success or struggles of these businesses? How does the business ecosystem geography compare to the broader demographic geography? So are these businesses existing in the communities that of Black and African Americans? Are they existing within those communities? Are they existing outside of those communities? Are there correlations across zip codes, et cetera? And then over time, we hope to collect enough data for like a longitudinal analysis where we can track trends over time. Are we seeing new businesses clustering in specific submarkets? Are there any submarkets, municipalities, counties, urban, rural areas that have higher rates of business longevity and success or failure, and why? And there's a growing body of data at the national level, as I mentioned before, and what we're trying to do is supplement that at the local level, and that will allow us to obtain a more nuanced understanding of Black-owned businesses within Arizona's unique socioeconomic context. If you go to the next slide, please. And so initial efforts, we were kind of just seeing what we could do on our own. And at the outset of the project, we began by scraping local business directory information from Google. We were tracking business names, contact info, addresses, social media, descriptions of business services and products, affiliated email addresses, anything and everything we could capture via public information. And our initial scrape was pretty successful. We captured about 600 businesses that had self-identified as Black-owned on Google and elsewhere. And the next step, we spent hours and hours combing the data, verifying the correct information, the contact information, verifying that these businesses were in fact Black-owned, verifying that these businesses were still open and were not casualties of COVID, which I'm sorry to say quite a few were. By the time we had gone through our initial screening, I would say probably 100 or so had closed because of COVID. And we completed any missing contact information as well, particularly email addresses, because we wanted to be able to connect with these businesses. And at the end of this data cleaning process, we had complete contact information and basic descriptions for about 425 Black-owned businesses across Arizona, the bulk of them residing in Phoenix and Tucson. And so I'm going to show you, I'm going to take control of the screen here. Oh, I've only been using Zoom for 2 years now. I should know how to do this. Here we go. And so this is the prototype that we have currently. And I want to emphasize prototype. This is step one of about 1,000 in what we're trying to accomplish here. But I wanted to just give you a rough overview of the functionality we have so far, as well as what we're trying to build out into the future. And so what you see here, the dashboard is currently running on a combination of census data over the last 3 years, in combination with that initial collection of about 425 locally verified businesses. And so on the right side, you'll see we have a map of Arizona. It's interactive, and it's laid out as a chloropleth map that measures business density within these various metropolitan statistical areas. So if you'll see, as I hover over the Flagstaff MSA, the top right corner of the map will show there's, total business density is about 23.7 businesses per 1,000 people. Prescott's something similar, about 20. Phoenix is about 15.8. Tucson's about 15, so on and so forth. Bullhead City and Kingman. And then what you can see is if you click on them, it'll open up snapshot by year. And again, this is census data, but it kind of breaks down overall density by employer firms and non-employer firms. And what you'll see here is this is 2019 data. You'll actually see there isn't any non-employer firm data because the census was not able to capture that in 2019. And again, this goes back to the challenge of just availability of data. And this, I think, was hampered due to the pandemic, because if we look at the 2018 data, they do have densities for non-employer firms. So again, I think COVID has really, there's a growing interest to capture this information at various levels, but I think there's just resource constraints and other issues that are making this more difficult. But you can see total business density of 15.4 per 1,000 total residents. If you look at Black and African American, that's about 4.3 businesses for every 1,000 Black residents. So you see, as Kristen mentioned previously, the parity of business and entrepreneurship is not equal to the overall state, and that's a problem. But you'll see we've got total measures of business across these various races and ethnicities. You can compare them directly to population estimates. And again, densities for non-employer firms, this is kind of where the meat of small businesses exists. And most small businesses are partnerships, sole proprietorships that don't have payrolled employees. And so this is where you'll see the largest portion of these businesses, and where you'll see a jump in the total number of non-employer firms compared to 1,000 total residents. It jumps from 15 to about 50. Black and African American businesses, it actually goes down, just again showing that there are barriers in place, making it very difficult for Black entrepreneurs to start a business here in Arizona and nationally. And then, and I forgot to show you one more thing, forgive me. We also track these trends longitudinally. And again, we hope to build this out as we collect data over years and years. And this is census data, but we hope to supplement this with the local data on local businesses that we capture. And you can kind of see that how business density per 1,000 population changes over time. And so you'll see Black and African Americans has kind of jumped around a little bit with employer firms. We're seeing steady increase in non-employer firms over time, at least for the couple of years we have data. These are strong indicators of the shifting demographics. You'll see total demographic shifts kind of trending down, whereas this kind of outsized portion of the economy and the population is growing. That's good to see. But lots more analysis and work to be done. And then over here, you can also toggle between metro areas, cities, and counties. So, eventually we want to populate chloropleth maps with these counties as we collect more data. Unfortunately, we're missing data for a large number of these counties. We also have some of the major cities here that we hope to kind of build similar analyses for. And then here we have a plot map of the roughly 425 Black-owned businesses that we did capture. And this is really kind of the geospatial analysis is critical here. Are they populating near infrastructure? Are they populating in this municipality or this submarket versus a different one? And you can kind of, again, we're not trying to drive directory information. We want to support other organizations already doing that. So this is more of like high level aggregate analysis, not so much, where can I find information on these businesses? For that, we're going to drive you to our partners who have these directories in place that can help you patron the businesses that you see here. And then this represents just a skeleton of what we ultimately hope to build. And so I'm going to stop sharing. We'll pass it back to the slide crew. And then what we found really was that we couldn't build this alone. You know, the roughly 425 businesses was a great start, but we really needed to engage in regional collaboration, and that's going to be the key to success and longevity of this project. And we need to leverage our peer organizations and those better connected to the business community. We can reach out to people with capturing email addresses, but the response rates are going to be just not very strong because we don't have the relationships with these communities. There's no reason for them to engage with us or to trust us. And so we aim to be the aggregate business data resource that supplements the work of our partners that are already engaging in the local business community. And our partners can remain the primary business directories and membership organizations for these businesses and consumers. And so local organizations such as Black Friday, Phoenix Soul, the Pacific Southwest Minority Supplier Development Council already have strong relationships with local businesses. And most importantly, they have the trust of the business community, and their platforms enable direct engagement with business owners. And so it's our goal to build these mutually beneficial partnerships that increase exposure for our partners to help them grow their platforms, increase exposure for the businesses within their networks and on their platforms, and help them connect their businesses and increase access to resources across the Black business ecosystem. And we also, our main goal is to provide an in-depth knowledge and understanding of the unique attributes and challenges of the local Black business community. And special thanks again to Black Friday for being our initial partner. They've been incredibly invaluable, and we appreciate them very much. And on my last slide, this is just the start. We have big visions for this project. We're very excited. We plan to continue building on our data collection efforts with our partners. We're currently working on getting a full layout of the Black Friday business directory, which currently has about 1,500 businesses and counting, which is pretty astounding considering they just, they've been in existence a year and a half, I think, roughly. And they've gone from, businesses on a Google spreadsheet to a full scale directory with 1,500 businesses. It's really something really impressive. And so we hope to continue our engagement with them, possibly engage in new partnerships down the road that will supplement our data, help our partners build on their data collection efforts, help to market the Black business ecosystem, and facilitate regional and statewide collaboration. And what I mean by that is this is a Black business directory, but that doesn't mean that someone shouldn't be doing this for the Hispanic business ecosystem, the Asian American business ecosystem, et cetera. And we think we can be an important piece of that and work collaboratively with our other partners to kind of foster this ecosystem. And we plan to build lots of new functionality within the dashboard as well. What you saw was a very, very rough skeleton. We hope to add new geography layers and filters. We want to add zip codes, commerce corridors, business clusters. And we also want to allow for filtering by various business characteristics. Let's see where businesses are dispersed by the industry they operate in, the year they were founded, are they female owned, are they veteran owned, et cetera. And so we're working with our partners to collect this information and then overlay it into our dashboard for further analysis. And really, we want to be inspiration and spur future endeavors across all segments of Arizona's business ecosystem, because if you can't measure it, you can't manage it, and you can't help it improve. And thanks again to everybody on this panel today, and thanks for letting me speak today. And I'm going to hand it back over to you, Robin.
Drew, thank you so very much. I'm really excited to hear that both GPEC and State of Black Arizona are working in collaboration with so many of our stakeholders and community partners in gathering information. I think that the more we can work together, the more quickly we can improve the data that we have available. So that's very exciting to hear. Lastly, I'd like to welcome Maria Lochner, the Deputy Director of Economic Development for the City of Tempe. Maria will be sharing how the City of Tempe created a program for Black manufacturing companies based on the outcomes of last year's report. Please welcome Maria.
Thank you so much, Robin. I'm very excited to be here as well. Going back to what Drew said and Teniqua, this event last year in March was actually the catalyst for the program that we created here in Tempe. If you'd go to the next slide, please, the title slide, there you go. So the name of our program is the focus on growing BIPOC micro manufacturing entrepreneurship in Tempe. And as I mentioned, participating on the other side as a viewer of last year's event was really eye-opening. Go to the next slide, please. So I'd like to say that March, there was a week in March of 2021 that was very foundational for this program. You know, first was this report on the state of Black business in Arizona, in which we learned at the time and understanding some of the constraints of data collection. But at the time, it appeared that there were no Black manufacturers in the state of Arizona, which, you know, we found to be unbelievable, especially considering what was going on at the time. I mean, coming out of the pandemic, I mean, all of us in economic development throughout the region and the state were focused on how to mitigate the economic impact. We come up with small business grant programs to help all of our small businesses. I know in Tempe, we had over 50% of the money went to minority business enterprises. And you know, there was a really strong focus to do that, but the focus was primarily on retail and hospitality, as those were seen to be the sectors that were most suffering, most struggling. And at the same time, we saw the industrial sector, as it is today, it continues to be ramping up like crazy and just going nuts. I mean, there's so much manufacturing and assembly and product distribution that's going on in the United States right now. There's very little space for that kind of activity that's existing. We have to build new industrial spaces for it. So hearing that there weren't any Black manufacturers participating in the growth of that just seemed, you know, kind of unbelievable and something that should not be, you know, tolerated. We needed to do something to change that. I mean, the Black entrepreneurs should also be able to participate in a large growing industry, as was happening and is currently happening with industrial and the industrial sector. Also, at the same time, there's a lot of us in economic development, Tempe specifically, we were trying to turn our attention toward more equitable economic development endeavors. Like, what are strategies that we can do to increase the equity in the economic development efforts that we are pursuing? And, you know, we'd come up with a variety of strategies, but, you know, it really seemed like everything was academic. Until, again, in that same week, I saw through my board seat with the Local Initiative Support Corporation, I saw an article about micromanufacturing in urban centers and how, and that was a new sector that was coming alive, where, you know, you don't need, you know, 50,000 or 100,000 square feet of warehouse space and, you know, large equipment. You know, people are doing things literally in garages or in basements or in small centers. And there's also co-working opportunity with that concept. And that really hit a chord with me for Tempe, because obviously we're landlocked, we're very small, we don't have the ability to build, you know, 500,000 square feet of warehouse and industrial space, but we do have the ability to work, you know, with existing entrepreneurs who want to focus on that small, you know, micro manufacturing scale. So with these two things happening in the same week, you know, first this report and then learning more about micro manufacturing in urban areas, a third thing happened the same week that really pulled us all together. And that was, I received an email from our intergovernmental manager saying that Greg Stanton, our Representative Stanton, and our two senators for Arizona we're going out to the different cities and asking if they had any programs that that we would like them to promote for community funding through the feds. So if you please go to the next slide, you'll see. You know, when I was asked that question, I said, yeah, I think I do. You know, let's see if we can get some money to do this. And it took a year, but in May of this year, we did get $500,000 approved through Congress to help with community project funding efforts for this BIPOC program. And the city then decided to match that grant funding from the federal government with $300,000. So now Tempe has $800,000 to launch this program in BIPOC micromanufacturing. So if you please go to the next slide, I can tell you a little bit about the program. The effort is really to help overcome the two main challenges in manufacturing, which are space and capital. Manufacturing, unlike other sectors, the retail sector or the service sector, they're really capital intensive. You need to have space to produce a product. You know, a lot of times with zoning codes, you can't do a lot of the production in your house. It's not allowed, and not a residential use. You know, you're not allowed to do that. You need to go to some place that has an industrial use. So, you know, that adds a barrier to, well, really all entrepreneurs, but as you already heard from Teniqua, Kristen, and Drew, you know, Black entrepreneurs are hit even harder with this. A secondary thing that is a challenge is the capital. You know, obviously you have to buy equipment as well. I mean, there's not a lot of manufacturing that can be done with things that you would buy for your home. You need to have industrial use or like a commercial kitchen or something of that nature, which again is more capital intensive. So in considering those two components, we thought, okay, for our program, maybe we could look at granting money that would go towards space and capital. So, and raw materials, obviously that's the second thing. So then you need inventory and raw material. So we developed this program with the help of everybody on this call, actually. Robin and Chris definitely helped us with letters of support, the state of Black Arizona with all of their data and background information. And then we were able to find, you know, through these partners, other partners such as LISC or Hustle Phoenix that have more, they're more connected with the current business community. And with that idea, we decided, okay, maybe we come up with some training and networking opportunities to help the Black entrepreneurs grow. You know, it's hard to do things in a vacuum. And when you are, you know, one of few, you need to be able to lean on each other. That's something that biotech especially has taught us in tech. You know, when you look at Silicon Valley, they work well together, right? So that you build off of each other. We thought with this program, we wanted to give that an opportunity as well. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So where are we to date? So as I said, the funding just came in May. We had various meetings with these different partners trying to figure out how to launch this program, because one of the things that, you know, Tempe had to come to grips is, you know, what are we good at and what are we not good at? And I would say what we're not good at is we're not really boots on the ground working every day with entrepreneurs, but there are people that are. So we decided, let's do an RFQ to identify consultants who are working with these BIPOC entrepreneurs, and we can give grant monies to them because they will already have vetted various businesses. And that will help us identify the local businesses that we can invest in and get the money to them, and then have them be part of that training and networking community that we're looking to build. And then working with Teniqua and the state of Black Arizona, capture all of the data and information as we are growing it. So we launched an RFQ in July. It came in 2 Fridays ago, and actually on September 8th, we're going to formalize through council action all of the contracts. And I'm happy to say we received 5 proposals. All 5 are getting contracts. All 5 have a way to bring their vetted companies to us so that we can provide these grant monies to help them as they go through the process and become successful. Additionally, all 5 contractors have agreed to work specifically with the state of Black Arizona, who will also have a separate contract with the city, so that we can monitor the progress and really provide that data and the data points that Drew and Kristen have been talking about. So if you go to the next slide, I can introduce for the first time anywhere who the contractors are. So Fabric Tempe has a training program, and they work specifically in the fabric and the fashion industry. Hustle Phoenix does a lot with Black entrepreneurs in all various forms and industries, and they're targeting, of course, manufacturers in Tempe. LISC is a big partner. They have backed financially Rail to CDC, who will be on the contract with us. They work along Apache and are very boots on the ground. They helped us a lot with our small business grant program as well. And the Pacific Southwest Minority Supplier Development Council, as Drew mentioned, they have hundreds of Black businesses in their directory. And our Tempe Chamber of Commerce is a good way to connect the different folks and the entrepreneurs that are coming into the system. And we think that all teams working together and providing all the information with the state of Black Arizona, we're really going to see if we can make a difference, at least on a small scale in micro manufacturing. And with that, I will turn it back over to Robin, and thank you very much for the time.
Maria, thank you very much. And actually, there was a lot of data there that is so important to the future of the Arizona Black economy. So I really appreciate that. We're going to jump right into the Q&A portion. We do have a combination of moderated questions that were created in anticipation of this event, as well as several questions that have come in since we've begun from the audience. And these are some really great questions. I'm going to start with one that actually came from our audience. Teniqua, this one's going to be for you. You mentioned that Black entrepreneurs start businesses out of necessity rather than opportunity. This is going to be a two-part. One, what do you mean by that? And two, how does this differ when compared to other demographics? And how does this drive business decisions for Black entrepreneurs?
Thank you to the audience for listening, and thank you, Robin, for the question. So rooted in a lot of data, if you have not had a chance to look at the report, as well as our snapshot around our access to capital, it actually shows that when African Americans are starting businesses, they have less than $10,000 or not even that to be able to start their business. So when you are looking at the wealth gap and the ability for people to start businesses in other communities, that number and that percentage that they have available are higher. So out of necessity may mean that they are starting it because this is the only opportunity they have. No capital, but something they want to do, whereas someone actually has the ability to have access to finances to be able to start it and to put everything in place as they start their business from the beginning.
Great, thank you for that. Now I'm going to go to one of the moderated questions, and this is for the entire panel. So feel free to either raise your hand or chime in. But here's a question. What kind of progress has been made since last year and 2020, what areas still need to be addressed? Maria?
I'm happy to start off. So one thing I think that's interesting is, as I mentioned, in the catalyst of the program for us was that there were no Black manufacturers that were accounted for in the study. And of course, we know data collection is always a complex issue, but I think since the group of us here have been talking about that and talking with others about that, we have actually found some. So it appears that there are Black entrepreneurs, and I'm working with the various partners. We think that there's a robust community that is starting out, and by addressing these issues head on the way we're doing, we are making them much more visible. And I think that's one of the issues related to the data constraints. And nothing exists until you see it. So now we're making them visible, and I think it's just going to beget more growth.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Kristen, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, so I think, to the point of what's been done, Maria's project, the project Drew talked about, are great examples of what's been done so far. But I think Maria hit on a key issue of what still needs to be addressed is even identifying the data. That was a huge constraint that we ran into with updating this report was, when the data is unavailable, how do you even measure it? So, the project that Drew is working on is a huge step in the right direction to address that. And I think, what we can continue to need to implement is some of those programs where we're talking about the access to capital and resources to get your business going and have it continue to be successful once it is going.
Cool. And then Robin, I'll jump in. Since our report in 2021, I first want to just make sure everyone understands it was very much, I think, a sweet spot and a highlight for many people who weren't aware of the gaps that were happening in our community. GPEC, State of Black Arizona, Black Chamber, anybody working in this space had an opportunity to really connect with folks who wanted to understand the whys, the challenges in the Black ecosystem. Even having great conversations, I think, with the work that Liz is doing. So what I would say to you is that the projects that you have seen, particularly or initiatives you've seen today, are one of many that we haven't highlighted. We know others are out there working. But what I would say when I think about the first report is the internal, external investments that need to come through our banks, how local government works with either some of our CDFIs. Those are things that still need to have a greater platform in how our Black entrepreneurs and our business owners are accessing that. And then again, going back to the points that Kristen made in the report is that we understand there is a lack of, but the way in which how our actual businesses or CDFIs, any kind of initiative that we have that is working is making sure that it is something that really sustains the growth and the opportunity for those businesses. And that will help us continue to move the needle. So if you've seen the recommendations and you're doing programs, please work to align strategies towards, because it goes back to what Drew said, like what is not measured actually doesn't help us move it forward and being able to move forward the work in this report. And both Kristen and I don't like just printing pretty reports that don't make change. It is truly for us to be that agent for you to then do what you do well on the ground and move things forward for our community.
Thank you. Drew, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just chime in. I think the word that comes up a lot is opportunity. And I think there's a lot of people doing really important work to create opportunities for Black entrepreneurship just within the last couple of years. Obviously, partners like BPI and others have been doing this work for 10 years longer in some cases. But we're really seeing a push for investment in these types of opportunities. And, talking about going back to Teniqua and Kristen's discussion of around like, we want Black entrepreneurs to start a business because they're seizing a valuable opportunity and they have the optionality to make that decision. Whereas we don't want Black entrepreneurship to be driven by the sense of, well, this is my only option. Like I can't find a job elsewhere, so I need to create my own. And that's largely a key driver of Black entrepreneurship currently. And so really, there's still a lot of work to be done in creating opportunity for Black entrepreneurs, and stuff like the CME program and those other initiatives that have been mentioned a couple of times here. We need to continue investing in building in those types of programs, and those foster connection across the ecosystem too. So that helps transfer the needed capital, the resources, the information, the guidance that a lot of these entrepreneurs need to be successful as well.
Great, thank you, Drew. Next question, and if you guys will indulge me, I would love to answer this one, but it says, how does collaboration work between Black Chamber of Arizona, Blacks Friday, and other partners, the State of Black Arizona and GPEC, to aggregate this data, and how are next steps determined to improve opportunities for Black entrepreneurs? So what you as an audience see as an hour and 15-minute presentation is a year's worth of work. I can personally attest to the fact that the work on this year's report started within a week of last year's report. This is a year-long process. And through that year, the Black Chamber of Arizona, Blacks Friday, GPEC, the State of Black Arizona are in constant communication. We are talking, several times a month. We're sharing information on an ongoing basis. I think Drew or Teniqua mentioned the value in creating a centralized source for information. So as it relates to a database, for example, we have been involved with Black Friday since their inception a year and a half ago. We believe, as the Black Chamber of Arizona, very strongly in the fact that we need a central database for Black-owned businesses. What we don't need is 5 or 6 organizations with fragmented information that are never coming together. So in support of that, we created a business directory membership for our chamber. It is a no-cost membership that allows us to collect data on businesses. You don't have to pay anything for it. And then at different intervals, we are collecting that data and just sharing it with Black Friday. So it becomes part of what they are doing so that we can go to one central database. As you may know, Black Friday is headquartered in Southern Arizona, but we obviously want to make sure that this information and impact is throughout the state. So that's how we're doing it, but this is an ongoing process. We are in constant communication. So we don't just collaborate around this specific event. It is truly, on a very frequent basis. So thank you for letting me address that one. Let's go to another question that is for the group, and it is, what are some ways individuals and nonprofits can provide support? This actually kind of echoes a question that was asked by the audience as well. So, the kind of subtopic was, what type of support is most needed? Financial support, in-kind donations, awareness, etc.
I can jump in. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I think the recommendations within the report are always the first step of being able to figure out how you can see yourself in the work that your organization does or could potentially do moving forward. State of Black Arizona wants to make sure that we give you the necessary tools to be able to support the work you're doing on the ground, whether you're currently doing it, whether you need to change strategy, or you want to actually start something. So I will say, like the project related to the Black Philanthropy Initiative, while they decided to move forward and say we want to develop a database, they collaborated with us and began a conversation around what our strengths are, what their strengths are, and begin to move forward in that nature. So you don't necessarily always have to collaborate with one of the organizations on this call, but what we are saying is that we are here to do that as the individuals who are actually working to keep aggregated data to disaggregate in front of folks and to move the needle on that. So that's my thought process to that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'll move on to the next question. Kristen, this question will be for you. Are banks, financial institutions, angel capital as available to Black entrepreneurs as to others?
So that is an area of concern. So we saw a lot of that, for example, during the pandemic when the government rolled out the Paycheck Protection Program. The first round of funding, the companies that were the most successful were the ones that already had existing relationships with banks. They didn't roll out, some of the access to more of the creative, the fintech, and other resources until the second round of funding. And correlated with that, we saw the Black-owned businesses being underrepresented in funding from Paycheck Protection Program. So I think just even looking at that one data point shows that there aren't quite those strong relationships to the banking and other financial resources, as you see with, kind of looking at the overall population. This is where, what we hit on in the report, where we have the opportunity with the fintech companies, because a lot of them, going back to the Paycheck Protection Program, we saw that provided an opportunity for a lot of our under-resourced businesses to be able to access that funding that they hadn't been before. We would like to see that kind of opportunity carried forward, in our day-to-day lives, where these fintech companies, kind of fill that gap. So it is an issue that right now, though, very much needs to be addressed.
Thank you, Kristen. And one of the data points in both last year's report and this year's report relative to the PPP funds that were distributed. In the first round, it was based on payroll records, and the data supports that many Black-owned businesses are solopreneur or family-run, so there was no payroll register, which is why Black-owned businesses were excluded in large part from the first round of funding. But it was work from organizations like the state of Black Arizona as advocates for improving the PPP program that allowed us to include solopreneurs in the second round. And so that's where this work has become really valuable in helping the Black community. Drew, what types of support should be provided to Black business owners to help them succeed in Arizona?
I think obviously financial resources and education are the two biggest buckets there. A lot of business owners don't have an MBA. You know, they're starting a business because they have a skill or a trade, but they don't have the expertise to how to build a business, how to manage their finances. Who do they need to be connecting with to help them can build their business? What resources, even just what resources are available to them, whether it's, bank loans, grants from nonprofits or local governments, et cetera. And then also just getting them connected to other players in the ecosystem. And that includes the Black business ecosystem, but just the broader business ecosystem, just getting them in the room with other entrepreneurs so that they can ask questions and have organic educational interactions with people and build authentic connections that will help them later in their professional, their business endeavor. And those are very broad, high level, nondescript answers, but it's a complex issue. And so going back to just the collaboration of all the key players like GPEC and SBAZ and BPI and the chambers and everything, like it all, we need to make sure we're all working together in conjunction to increase the interconnectivity of this information and these resources to help these entrepreneurs looking to get into the game, get them connected smoothly and quickly.
Great, thank you, Drew. Maria, what is your recommendation to the broader business community to empower innovative entrepreneurs in underserved communities?
So first I wanted to say thank you, Drew. You just described our program perfectly. And maybe that's a part of it, through mentorship or training, looking for a broader base of suppliers, for example. So if you're a larger company, maybe you want to look for a supplier that produces a raw material or some other item that you need for your business. Look at the Black community first. There are a lot of different businesses that do very many things. And now that we have these directories and the visibility is there, I think it just makes sense to try to go that route first instead of always doing the same thing, or at least include them, like what we're trying to do more at the city as well, is trying to make sure you're including a diverse group of businesses in opportunities to provide quotes and estimates. So if you have to go and get quotes for a job that you need done, make sure that at least you're getting one from a Black business. I think that would be probably the best way to start.
Maria, that's great advice. Teniqua, what are your top 3 strategic priorities to turn this report into action over the next 3 to 6 months?
I can only speak of it as collaboration, partnerships. So one, I definitely want to see and disseminate out this report more so to those who are not aware of the information. A lot of the banks or representatives who on this call have known from the bigger institutions. I want to work with you on figuring out strategy to really be able to drill down on the access to capital for our communities. And so if I haven't had that conversation yet with your bank, that is one of the priorities, because we want to see the paradigm shift on that. I think secondly is this database. It will be, I think, an amazing tool for us to truly understand what is happening within the Black ecosystem. And so, as Drew said, we are working to layer it on. Our first partner is Black Friday. And so within the next 2 years, through the support of the Black Philanthropy Initiative, we hope to make some gains there. And then third, understanding that there are other organizations out there doing great work. How can our data be instrumental in helping them move forward strategy? I think Maria at the City of Tempe is a great example of how the report gave her motivation, opportunity, and then we began to work over the last year of having conversation. And a lot of it is you don't know what you don't know until you start talking. So we talked for several months before she actually decided what was going to be that final product. So I think that is huge. Don't be afraid to have conversations with us and to know that immediately it's not going to be something that you pinpoint, but that it may take time for us to find that synergy so that ultimately we can change and build up our Black ecosystem of Black businesses.
Thank you so much, Teniqua. Let's just move into some final remarks. Let's take 20 to 30 seconds and just, if there's something you want our audience to take away from this. I'll start with Maria.
Thank you very much. So my final remark is that there is a lot that can be done, and it's a great opportunity to be creative, and working together, I think, is the best way to make something like this happen. As Teniqua just mentioned, we were only able to do this in Tempe because we pulled together partners from all over. So that's the secret. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Drew, final remarks?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is there's a lot of different avenues and threads to pursue in this high level mission. And I think the important thing is that we keep talking, we keep collaborating into the future. Let's make State of Black Business Report 35 in whatever, and just always be building on what others are doing in the ecosystem and what you have done previously in the ecosystem, and just figure out ways to just build on the foundations laid by others, rather than trying to recreate the wheel yourself, or leverage the expertise of people in the region as well has been huge, because you don't know what you don't know, and trying to do this in a silo is not going to be successful. So yeah, keep talking with others, connect with others, ask questions. It's okay to not know things.
Thank you, Drew. Kristen?
I would just encourage everybody to make sure that you download and read the report. The genesis of this a couple of years started because we knew we didn't have the information and the partnerships that we've been able to build with State of Black Arizona, with the Black Chamber of Commerce, to create this data and share it with others. I would just really encourage everybody to read it and see how you can plug into the system.
Thank you, Kristen. And Teniqua, let's close out with you.
I'm just going to say everybody wins when we invest in our Black businesses and our neighbors. So take the time, strategize, do what you have to do. As Robin said, we talk and we are working on this every day. So please join us in being able to make sure that our Black entrepreneurs and our Black businesses can thrive in Arizona.
Thank you. Really appreciate everybody. I'm going to end on this one last thing. Someone asked, how do you join or how do you get a directory listing in either the Chamber or Black Friday? Black Friday, BLAX Friday.com. Black Chamber of Arizona is blackchamberaz.com. If you go to membership and choose business directory membership, there's no charge for that, but you can input your business information. I want to thank everybody. This report is not only much needed, but it's really, really valuable to our entire Arizona economy and ecosystem. And I want to thank everybody for the work I know you put in. Of course, I see behind the scenes, so I know how hard everyone works to create what seems like a simple, multi-page hour and 15-minute report. But hopefully everybody will get some much needed rest. It's Wednesday, so we know that Friday we'll be starting on next year's report. But thanks everybody. This has been great. Have a wonderful day. And as Maria said, please read the report. I think that's where we will see the greatest value is when you see the report, you'll find ways where you can help. Have a great day, everybody.